Hey everyone, this is smpratte, and today we're going to talk about the age-old question, are Pokemon cards too expensive? This is a topic that's been around since February of 1996 when Pokemon was born, and if you ask me today, in general, do I think Pokemon cards are too expensive? No, I do not. And before you get triggered, let's have a conversation. Majority of the cards in this hobby, literally 51% or more, are under $20. And that's a good starting point to understand this in a general sense. I think a lot of serious collectors get honed in on their specific goals, the PSA 10s, the PSA 9s. But when you start removing those labels and going down the condition ladder, things start to become more affordable. And that's what I want to talk about. Not only the affordability and perhaps some other avenues that I'm going to throw at you, but also the perception of value. I think it's a very important topic for understanding hobbies, specifically Pokemon, the timeline that we've experienced. It's important to have a perception of value or, a card that is worth $1,000 or $100. The prices increasing are ultimately a good thing as far as establishment is concerned. I think a good way to understand this is there was a grocery store. I'm always using grocery stores. There was a grocery store back in the day that had olives they couldn't sell. And, naturally, what do? You take the price, undercut, till you get it off the shelf, you try to liquidate it as fast as possible. They did the opposite. They increased the price. And this is where that perception of value comes into play. For some reason, it became more gourmet, whatever it was. Whatever psyche they tapped into, it worked. And for something like hobbies, specifically Pokemon, the perception of value when something is worth $1,000, $500, $100 is more valuable and more serious and more legitimate than when it's worth $5 or $1. If everything was worth $1, not only is that not a market, it's not fun. There's no point. What's the point if everything's worth $1? There's no chase, there's no hunt, there's no incentive to grow. And this isn't just an emotional perspective, it's actually something you can couple with data. If you go back to about 2003 to 2007, go to Bulbapedia, look at Japanese promos from 2003 to 2007. In those 4 years combined, there are less than the entire amount from 2017. So that right there shows you that perception of value, the incentive of having a market, the incentive of having a chase, a challenge. And sure, some cards are probably out of reach for people. I think when a lot of people ask the question, are cards too expensive today? What they really mean is, at some point in time, they could buy, let's say, like a Charizard base PSA 9 for less than they could today. Whatever it may be, pick your poison. I think that's usually the actual, stand that they're coming from or position they're coming from. When in reality, majority of the cards today are still affordable. And here's a couple avenues, I would say, perspectives to consider. Number one, ungraded cards do exist. This is actually here. This is real life. This is right here. This isn't a green screen. This is actually here. And for example, something like this is a 1996 base set Charizard. The first Charizard releases set, 22 years old. And in condition like this, probably EX near mint, maybe $50. So this is under $100. The first Charizard release, the infamous Charizard Japanese, under $100 easily. So that's one example, is ungraded. I would even say the entire Japanese base set at large is extremely affordable, especially for the fact that it's literally the first set. So there are so many examples like this. When you get into the ungraded cards and you knock down the PSA 10 labels, the PSA 9s, it really becomes affordable. I've been doing sets on the side. I'm redoing some binders and some different organization. And I'm just flabbergasted by how cheap some of these cards are. You're talking about first edition WotC Hollows, especially if you're going for a light played card. EX near mint, that's my wheelhouse. I don't like putting I used to be all near mint to mint or mint in a binder that I'm too tempted to grade it now. Even if it's especially like Shinings or first edition base, I'm like, man, I can't keep this. Even with Charizard, it's like Charizard might as well be, it's got to have a dog bite, it's got to have, the corner has to be cut for me to put in a binder these days, because pretty much every grade for Charizard has value now. So the point is that outside of these big marquee items, majority of the cards are still affordable. And even want to say, take, the Big King Charizard card, go all the way down to play condition. For its historical value and its significance, it still isn't that bad. One other aspect I want to talk about, lower grades. Lower grades are something that people sleep on. And by sleep on, I mean they just have no idea how affordable these cards are. And we're talking, some are even 9s. There's some 9s out there, 8, 7s, you go down the ladder. So something like this is a PSA 7. This is PSA 7 Shining Mew, Japanese promo, very popular and familiar card. The front looks fine. There's nothing wrong with the front. The damage is going to be, you probably can't see this far away from the camera. You got a chip of whitening here and a little bit of whitening around the corners. But that's pretty much it. Otherwise, if you had this sitting in your office, it's just going to be just as nice from the front as a 9 or a 10 would. It just, the back is going to be the problem. And for a lot of people who value this as art, as we do, that's majority of collectors, that's mostly what you're looking at as the front. So if you are someone who does want, that full, I get it, the full mint, because I'm in that camp as well, especially for certain set cards. If you want the full 10 or 9 or whatever it may be, that's definitely your choice. But the thing I want to throw at you is, you're getting to a point now in this hobby where it's like, do I want to spend an extra $50, $100, $200, even $1,000 for that little bit less whitening? That's your call. That's up to you. Do you value that aesthetic appeal or that beauty of the card to spend that premium? If you really want to go and look at something like sports, it really gets dramatic. You have things like Mickey Mantle rookies where you're talking a $50,000 difference in grades, some even almost $1 million difference in grades for certain, highly historical pieces. But at the end of the day, lower grades is an option. Here's another example I have, an English card, very similar scenario. The hollow, beautiful, perfect. It's just the back is going to have some whitening. And again, if you have this, like I have some here sitting next to my computer, I have cards sitting here and they're 10s, but I never turn around and actually look at the back. So that would be the advice that I would give for people who are disgruntled with the increase in prices. And another angle I want to give you is collecting an illustrator. So what I mean by that is each card, for most people we understand this one is Sugimori, we know Rita, some of the bigger ones Imakuni, but there's people who collect Kasube or some of these lesser known, but they've been around for a while, these illustrators who've been here for a minute. This is a very affordable goal to achieve. Majority of those cards are not even going to be $5 a piece. Some of them aren't even going to be $1. Some of them are very cheap. And if you get something like Uyama, for example, who really has a potent style, Uyama's Pikachu. I know the Ninth Lucky Stadium's in there. There's definitely going to be some heavy hitters in certain illustrators. But at the end of the day, you can make a nice binder full of Uyama cards or full of Arita cards or you name it. Name your favorite illustrator. You can make a binder full of that. And that's something, that spawns from this incentive. Going back to that perception of value. When things become more valuable, you start to recognize these new patterns. Now we have so many collectors that really get down with, what's the history of this card, the significance of this release. I really like this type of card with this release, with this background, or this stamp, or whatever it is. And that's, again, because of that perception of value. When the cards become more valuable, so does the market. And so do the ideas. The game itself becomes more valuable. So whenever people pose that question, do I think Pokemon is too expensive? Having a foot in other hobbies as well, like sports and things that are much more established, no, it isn't. There's a very ease to entry to Pokemon that doesn't really exist in a lot of the hobbies. That's another thing that should be mentioned, is it's very difficult to get into vintage sports. It's almost impossible at this point. For example, people who ask me, hey, I got $5,000 to spend. What can I do with that? And I always just tell them, I'm like, buy what you like. Just buy, that's my general advice. Buy what you like. If you don't have genuine interest, it's going to be a grind. So if you had $5,000, you want to get into vintage sports, you can maybe buy one single card, and that's it. Majority of vintage sports is such a monopoly market inherently because you have limited goods, compounded with the historical aspect of them being 50 to 100 years old. So therefore, you're competing with people who are investment bankers, lawyers, you name it. They're probably at the top of their career, so they have an exorbitant amount of consumer income, and they're competing with other people like that. So with Pokemon, we don't have that. It's a very, very easy to entry hobby. And again, if you go down this route of lower grades, ungraded cards, even doing that illustrator thing I mentioned, it's going to be a ballpark where you're going to have a lot of success. Because you can come in with $1,000 in total to your name, or even less than that. Like that illustrator goal I was talking about. That's something, even if you have $50 a month, or even less than, go to Walmart and have a part-time job. You could still find some type of goal and enjoyment in this hobby. That's why, in my opinion, I think it's the best modern hobby available to date. So that's pretty much everything I have. One other bonus point I'll throw in here is that people who are frustrated with prices, I think another pro tip would be, this is why people say buy the expensive card first. This is why people say buy your Charizard, buy your Shinings, buy your Gold Stars for the set category. And then, for trophy cards, it's always been like this as well. Any item that is genuinely rare and or significantly valuable or popular, you should buy that one first. And why people say that is, if you go back 5 years ago and look at Charizard, it was probably it was a fraction of the value of what it is today. Okay, even if it was half or whatever it may be, if you compare that with something like a full heal from first edition base, or a switch, or an energy, or a gust of wind, if you compare that from 5 years ago, the value's like this. You know, it's the exact same. In fact, you could probably go back 10 years and it's the exact same with a little bit of growth in there. So you have that exponential growth usually with the significantly rare or popular cards. This is why people say buy those first, because you could always pick up that full heel down the road, even if it goes from like $20 to $30 or even $20 to $40. It's like, that's much easier than $5,000 to $25,000. So there you go. That's pretty much everything I have on if I think cards are too expensive. In general, I don't. Keep in mind that perception of value is very important for the hobby. That's why I'm here today talking to you. That's why we have all the options and all the opportunity that we do today. And that's what you want. Keep in mind, time is on your side. If you're young, you have plenty of time to achieve your goals. Yes, the exceptional cards are exceptional. And if you're an average buyer as far as numbers are concerned, you'll have to rotate your goals. Same for me. You know, for me, people are like, okay, you got the trophy cards or whatever. But if you put me in vintage sports, I always want to get that Gretzky 10 rookie. That's out of my wheelhouse now. You know, that's something I can't touch feasibly. So, you know, everyone has their limitation. You just have to be aware of that and just readjust your goals. So there you go. Let me know your thoughts. Let me know if you agree with this, disagree, if any of this helped you. And that's pretty much it, guys. Till next time.